Hello, my fellow Alaskans. Here we are in part 3 for today. As you can see by the title above my head there, it says the Alaska Corrupt House Budget Debate, the final chapter. They have made it through every single amendment that they had sitting there on the table to be listened at the floor today. After 3 days of debate through them all, they tabled about 20 of those amendments to where they never even got heard, which I'll explain probably later on. But right now, at the moment, they're getting ready to begin getting their stuff there in Juneau all set up and ready to go for them to start their final floor session and vote on the overall budget with all the new amendments. Mind you, this budget is about $7 billion, $7 billion with a B. And that does not, and the only budget reduction that I believe that I saw them make was when they decided, the far left extremists there, all on the behest of the ex-Governor Walker and Les Guerra and the recalled Dunleavy groups and Alaska AFL-CIO and Rasmussen Foundation and the Ship Creek group. Man, I could just go right on down the list there, that all have been attacking Governor Dunleavy since day one. They decided that because of that at-will employee that was fired, repeat, at will, the executive branch have every right to release anybody for absolutely no reason that is an at-will employee. Said there was, I believe, a litmus test that was applied with them to be able to keep their job. And so they won during their lawsuit. And the court said that the governor was personally responsible for that. And so was the state. Well, by law, the governor is underneath our umbrella as being the governor. He was doing his job when he released the at-will employees, asked them all to turn in their resignation notices, and if they wanted a new job or to come back again, all they had to do was apply. And from my understanding, the bulk of those people that did do that automatically got their jobs back. This person didn't, and so the lawsuit came about. Well, the far extremists, the biggest extremists sitting down there in Juneau in the House, decided to bring an amendment to remove the funding from the state. So the state's no longer going to pay for that lawsuit that was brought against the governor, and they're now making the governor personally responsible for paying back that money. So about $400,000 the governor has just been saddled with as a personal debt, thanks to Alaska legislators in the House. Hopefully the Senate squashes this portion of the budget and it gets reversed, and the state pays for it like they knowingly should, because the governor was performing his duties. If this is to pass, if I was a future governor, I'd really think really hard about ever wanting to be a governor. You can't fire an at-will employee without getting the threat of a lawsuit. Or if you make a mistake as you are being governor, and you could find yourself personally liable in the duties of your role as being governor, this sets a really bad precedence out there for future legislators, future governors, when you can start imposing those kind of fines directly upon their personal lives as they're performing their duties. This would be no different than you at your job, wherever you may work, and something bad happens at your job while you are working, and the company says, oh, well, because you allowed that person to come in and cause all of this damage, you're now responsible to pay for all of that damage. We're going to hold you personally liable, and because we're your employer, we're just going to wash our hands to it all so that you don't have to pay one penny of it and find yourself completely broke. I mean, just where do you stand at? So lots of different things that were tried to also be brought up into the budget here. They got a $57 million K through 12 increase that passed through. There was quite a few amendments that was brought forward to try to remove at 1.7 million of that, and then an additional 2 million after that from that 57 million. Both of those amendments failed. They do not want to reduce one penny of that $57 million one-time bonus that they gave K through 12. And they say this bonus is in lieu of, in case their new student-based allocation doesn't pass through. if they were to follow the current laws that they have on the books, they should be seeing a $130 million budget decrease because they got a 10% reduction in the student base that is out there going to school. But you know, our legislators, they don't want to follow the law. They had a $3.5 billion surplus. I broke out quite a bit of that budget that they had already spent in the top comments for this video and explaining where that money is going to. I listened to the Senate, I believe, no, it was the House earlier. They did it in the lunch hour break of between the first and the second half. They had listened to the beginnings of the capital budget, which is not a part of this budget, but the next thing that they'll be debating there on the House floor, but the capital budget, and it already started out at $1 billion. And from my understanding, if you take this budget, which is $7 billion, and you take the capital budget, which they are now going through, everything that is going to be spent, including all of the funds that they still have remaining from the coronavirus, supposedly is around $13.5 billion this year. By my calculations, they have $29 billion to be spending statewide in both the state and local levels combined. The stuff that was direct pass-through directly to, like, the native organizations. Alaska Native Tribes got $1.7 billion handed directly to them, and they were told they could spend it any way they want to. First billion got divided between 18 tribes. One of those tribes only has 3 members in it. So that first billion was divided evenly between all 18 of them. Man, imagine how rich those 3 people in that tribe are now. No clue where to spend the money, but they can do whatever they want with it, and that's exactly what they have been doing. Some of it I've heard has gone to good causes. Other of it, I'm just really shaking my head. I mean, they're building a housing for people in Bethel, more Alaska housing type structures, cheap housing, so that they don't have to pay for the costs themselves to live someplace that they can't afford to live, and the state's paying for the residents to live in the first place. Oh. Man, just a long, drawn-out process. And then they had the trails, the ice roads, the ones that are between the rural villages that they make every single winter. And they wanted the state to pay for all of that and cover those ice roads, where when Kevin McKay brought up a good point that Big Lake has the same thing. In fact, our road in the Big Lake area is also designated as a road that the state troopers and everybody else acknowledges for the wintertime, including like all the freight companies, the propane companies, the oil companies that deliver fuel oil, stuff like that. All of them use that ice road during the wintertime, and it is maintained by the personal property owners in the Big Lake area. It has no state dollars that are going to maintain that road. And yet these people out in the rural areas want these ice roads, ice trails made. And the reason why I keep emphasizing the word trails when I say that is they're not under the same obligations, environmental regulations, having to have reports made, environmental studies of the impact of these roads that they're making during the wintertime. None of that has to happen when you call it a trail. Good example of that is the big swatch that they cut through the mountainside there in the Anchorage area. Oh, she just gavelled in.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move and ask unanimous consent that we take number 30, amendment number 30 off the table.
There's been an objection. Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall Amendment 30 be taken from the table? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
13 yeas, 24 nays.
With 13 yeas and 24 nays, Amendment number 30 will not be taken from the table. Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that we take amendment number 45 off the table.
There's been an objection. Are you ready for the question? Question is, shall amendment number 45 be taken from the table? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
8 yeas, 29 nays.
With 8 yeas and 29 nays, amendment number 45 will not be taken from the table. Representative Clayman.
Madam Chair, I move and ask unanimous consent to rescind action on Amendment 75.
There's been an objection. The question is, brief it is.
Oh man, I'll tell you what, the browser audio capture for some reason stopped working there. Oh, stop. Man, I'll tell you what. There we go. Now it's back to normal. Sorry about that there. The amendment number 75, that was the one that you see the big write-up in my top area there that was Man, it's sad how things just completely get shut down here on my microphones. The amendment number 75 was the amendment that made the governor have to pay for the lawsuit instead of the state paying for it. The far left extremists that brought that bill forward. I was talking about it before this all started. And they brought that bill forward, and now they want to rescind the vote on it. It did pass. I think it was 24 to 15 or 14 because there were some members missing there, as you can see by the top up on top of the missing members, 3 or 4 members missing. And so it did pass, and they said that the governor was now going to have to pay for it. That's really did create some unburdensome precedents in the future, legislators, and what they will end up having to pay for and do out there. It is really, really scary that they're allowing this kind of stuff to be done and get away with doing what they are doing. So it will be really interesting to see what the vote's going to come out of this. The ones that you see that have bailed out of the room, they're the main crafters of that amendment. And again, these are folks that as soon as they get done with legislation here and they're no longer down there in Juneau, they work directly for the campaigns of Walker and Guerra. Les Guerra out there, they're the ones that brought the Recall Dunleavy group together against us, and not the legislators themselves, but in cahoots with them. They're the ones that actively worked to continue to protect people like Forrest Dunbar and Chris Constant, no matter how racist their remarks had been, and including Begich, when all of those folks that were there and running. You just kind of really got to shake your head and decide which direction that you want to go. On another note, they had bills today that were brought forward to expand the railroad to the Point McKenzie from all the way from Fairbanks and through each stage of the different projects. Combined total of the two that I heard for the amendments for the railroad today would have been about a $2.2 billion if you did them both, the two different amendments they had brought forward for the different sections of that expansion. that belongs in the capital projects. But listening to the House Finance today and what they had to say about the capital projects, that these amendments that they were trying to push through today will not find the capital budget. They ones that are in control there are the purse strings, those in the finance. Their objectives do not align with the entire party that is in the House, and that's where the illegal binding House coalition that they formed, where they sold out their voices to be yes and no's, depending on what the caucus leaders tell them to do. They will lockstep vote in line with whatever they want. And anything that will expand the Port McKenzie, get the railroad through, get the road through, anything that's going to help commerce throughout the entire state of Alaska. The Democrats, the left in the rhinos there in Juneau do not want this to happen. And they don't want it to happen because if they make things too easy for people, they make it easier for people to get out of poverty, then they have less control. The pandemic helped them out in Juneau dramatically. I mean, we had less than 1/3 of our population living in poverty. Now we have 40% of our population living in poverty. And when they made the announcement, the looks on the legislators' faces that were in the room was like, is that all? We thought we had driven more into poverty than that. It's one of the reasons why they don't want to pay us a statutory PFD. If they were to pay the $4,200 to each and eligible Alaskan out there that is due, that $4,200, it would be a boost that would, for most of them, lift them directly up and out of poverty, especially if you're a family of four. Imagine $4,200 4 times, $16,800 into your household in one big chunk. That would lift a good chunk. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that 40% dropped down to 20% living in poverty once they received those checks. And you would find Alaska starting to prosper and not feel the recession as bad. That's why one of the reasons why Alaska didn't feel the recession the last time. Oh, gavelled in.
Will the House please come to order? Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the House rescind previous action in adopting Amendment Number 75? Members may proceed to vote. Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
1 yea, 36 nays.
With 1 yea and 36 nays, action will not be rescinded on Amendment Number 75. Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ask unanimous consent to bring Amendment 7 for consideration.
There's been an objection. Brief it is.
All right, they went to another at ease once again. I was right. It was the amendment for the governor and for making him pay for those legal fees. Just imagine if you're in his position to find yourself with $500,000, you got to pay out of your own pocket for legal fees in the course of doing your job. And that's really, really scary that they weaponized it the way that they did. So we'll have to wait and see what is going to become of it. And then to see an almost unanimous vote. The vote before was 20-17. I had the numbers way off, but 20 people had voted yes, 17 had voted no, 3 are not there, so they did not vote at all. And this time it was unanimous almost. I mean, they had there are 36 of them that voted no to rescind their past vote, and only one that voted yes. Oh, gavelled in.
Will the House please Representative Gillum?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move amendment number 7.
There's been an objection. Representative Gillum.
Yes, Madam Speaker. This amendment removes $57 million and the contingency language that was added in House Finance for Education. The contingency, that $57 million, will go to schools if similar BSA increased legislation doesn't pass the legislature this year. If the contingency language wasn't in the bill, I might be able to support this one-time funding, but I can't support a one or the other. Alaska's average per capita education spending is one of the highest in the nation. According to NEA, in 2020, Alaska spent $20,553 per student. Between 2003 and 2018, there's been a 95% increase in education spending. Only New York and North Dakota are higher than Alaska. Alaska's also increased education spending 3 times faster than the rate of inflation. Alaska students currently rank near the bottom of education performance in the country, depending on which study you look at. Somewhere between 45th and 52nd if you include DC and Puerto Rico. I know there's a lot of things that contribute to that, to the rankings, including geographics, high energy cost, absentees, and poverty. But there's no data suggesting higher rates of education spending produce better outcomes. So we can see much better results and efficiencies in our education system if we use the resources we already have to fund students, not the systems. Before we add more money to the system, the system has serious flaws. We should look at drastic measures taken to find efficiencies. It's been a long day and a long 2 days. So one such thing is an insurance pool. In August of 2017, the Department of Administration showed the education system could have saved somewhere around $112 million in the previous 5 years with insurance pooling. We didn't do that, and we're still not looking at that. Other efficiencies include innovative energy cost solutions. And my colleague to my right from Tok, one of his schools, Gateway School District, went with LED lighting, and that has cut their energy costs down significantly. In addition, over the past 2 years of COVID and the reduction in student attendance attending public schools, the hold harmless provision in our statute should certainly be funding districts at an acceptable level. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Brief it is.
They just can't get their act together, no more than do a introduction of what they want to say, and they're back at it at ease again. This is going to be a long evening. They plan on finishing HB 281 for the capital or state budget today, and they also plan on finishing HB 282 for the mental health budget. The mental health budget portion of things is usually just a big rubber stamp by everybody that's there. They don't even really criticize anything at all, try to do a few minor budget deductions, which in this body will never happen. So that's kind of where we all stand at here right at the moment. The PFD budget debate, David Eastman had brought forward an amendment. It was somewhere in the 80s. And he was starting to bring in taxes from gaming and charities, the casino money revenue that is made by the cruise ships given out, anything and everything that you could think of. And the only one out of all the amendments to that amendment that passed was when he said, we'll pull it directly out of the earnings reserve account. And then when it came to the actual vote for the actual main amendment, of course, it failed. So it just kind of shows you the will of the balance of the party that is down there.
Will the House please come back to order? Is there further discussion on amendment number 7? Representative Story.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak against this amendment. I put on your desk earlier in the day an article from ICER, how much does Alaska spend on K-12 education? And you can see that adjusted to the national average, it's $12,281. And so I think that when we look at this investment of $57 million, it is critical. We've been flat funding for 6 years now. Inflation has put such downward pressure. It's really affecting what we can offer our students. They are seeing less teachers in the classroom. They're having to cut. Districts are classes that keep kids really motivated, such as career tech classes, music, art. And so this is just really needed for our students to have a quality experience in school. Our students are our precious ones, and I really want the members to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? In wrap-up, Representative Gillum.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I actually expected a whole lot more kickback than that. But like I said yesterday, I am not against education. What I'm against is the no accountability. And this is not taking money away, it's just not adding to the budget. So it's not hurting the kids from what we already have. Until we look at all the efficiencies that we can find, no matter whether it's in education, transportation, DOT, whatever, until we find those efficiencies, I just can't keep adding more money to a budget. And that's what this is doing. I have 4 kids in grade school, and I don't want them to go uneducated, but I want them to get the kind of an education that I got. Go back to the basics. Teach them, math, reading, spelling, science. All the other stuff that they're trying to teach now is not basic education. So, like I said, I am not against education. I'm just against the non-accountability from throwing money at something that's not working. Thank you. I would ask, push your green button.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall amendment number 7 to committee substitute for House Bill 281 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
16 yeas, 21 nays.
With 16 yeas and 21 nays, amendment number 7 has failed to pass the House. Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move amendment number 46 as well as amendment 1 to 46.
Brief it is.
So anything to shut down the conversation down there, that they don't hesitate, they push that button. So here was another one on the education and their budget. And when it comes to protecting the special interest, you bet they're going to vote it down every single time, anything that's going to cut their budget. I was describing earlier how they had just a small $2 million cut from that $57 million bonus they wanted to get them, and they lined up just like you saw the vote right there and completely stopped it from happening.
Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So Amendment 1 to Amendment...
Representative Kirka, you need to move.
I move Amendment 1 to Amendment 46.
You need to move Amendment 46.
I already have.
Brief it easy.
I co-sponsored it.
Man, oh man, oh man, back at another ad ease again because they can't get their acts together. Oh, there we go.
House, please come back to order. Representative Kirka. Point of order, Representative. Yeah.
Thank you.
No. Brief it ease.
Again, they still can't get their act in order. This is an amendment number 46, which I believe they rolled to the bottom instead of tabling. And now they can't make up their mind what they want to do.
Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As with all the other intent language amendments, this is dilatory. I move and ask unanimous consent that we table this amendment.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Amendment 1 to Amendment 46 is not an intent language.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. The maker of the amendment who moved did it simultaneously in one motion. And so I think that the representative from Nikiski is correct in being able to table the whole thing in one motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Are you ready for the question? Representative Kirka.
It is true that I incorrectly moved the motion to the amendment to the motion initially, but then there was an objection, and then I got up a second time, and you asked me, and I moved the amendment to the amendment.
Brief it easy. You can't move an amendment before.
So they still can't get their story straight. He's trying to move the motion for number 46 and add amendment number 1 to it. And they keep continuing to make it a big stall tactic here. I don't understand what's going on or why there is so much interference other than the fact that he misstated it by bringing them both in at the exact same time. This is just political statesmanship, showmanship of how far can we continue to keep pushing the rules to make our agenda the top priority and your agenda look foolish. And they've done a very good job of that the last 3 days, and it's really, really sickening to see it happening.
Will the House please come back to order? Are you ready for the question? Question is, shall amendment number 46 be tabled? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
29 yeas, 7 nays.
With 29 yeas and 7 nays, amendment number 46 has been tabled. Representative Tilton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move amendment number 39.
There's briefities.
As fast as you blink, they're at another ad ease. Amendment number 46, they ended up tabling. this has been a really bad move on the House minority Republicans' part this year. They were tabling amendment after amendment after amendment. Once amendment gets tabled, then the entire body has to vote on it, whether or not to untable it to actually be able to discuss the amendment. And as Kevin McCabe said on the Michael Dukes show earlier at the top of hour one, he made mention that he did this so that they could get along, play along to get along, so that they could get the budget moved out, because he wants out of there within 90 days. And you got to be really foolish to think they're going to get out of there within 90 days when they have $13.5 billion to spend. I mean, this is just the first part. This is only $7 billion of that $13.5 billion they're trying to spend down there. The budget would originally have been around $4.8 billion this year, because they heard of all that $3.5 billion surplus above and beyond their current budget. They had to find a way to be able to spend it. So that's exactly what they've been doing, like forward funding K through 12, which they've done in the years past and have been shot down in the courts every single time they've done it, because it goes against Alaska's constitution. You can't forward fund a next legislator's purse strings. You can't tell the next set of legislators that are going to be in Juneau next year that they can't spend because they say no.
Back to order. Representative Tilton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And this is an interesting.
Representative Tilton.
Yes, I'm sorry. I move amendment number 39. They objected already.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's been a long day.
It's been a long day. This is an interesting amendment because unlike.
Brief, please. Representative.
Okay, they immediately just shut her back down again because of some other objection in the back room that they're trying to correct, or someone wasn't able to find the bill and they're looking for it. They are definitely not organized. Louise Stutes just said it very eloquently, if you want to put it that way, that they're getting very tired down there.
To order. Representative Tilton, you're up.
Second verse, the same as the first, a little bit louder and a little bit worse. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Amendment number 39 is a little bit different. It actually takes language out of the budget, language that was put in the Department of Health and Social Services in 2014 that was meant to be a temporary language to help the department in the first time we were doing big reductions to the Department of Health and Social Services, reductions that were actually coming out of the Medicaid budget. And then we wanted to be sure that we didn't short the Medicaid budget, so this language was put into the budget then. Unfortunately, sometimes when you start something, you are unable to stop a habit. And what has happened in this with this language is it has been inserted into the budget every year except for in 2016. In 2015, it was in the budget for $50 million, which may not seem like a lot of money, Madam Speaker, but when you're looking at the size of the Department of Health and Social Services, $50 million may not seem like a lot of money. But the bottom line, Madam Speaker, is that we are the appropriators. And by allowing this authority to remain in the budget, we are allowing the department to make decisions to move money in between appropriation lines, not allocations where they already have that authority, but we're giving them authority to move in between appropriation lines. That one time when we wrote that intent language, it was because we were taking money from the Medicaid budget. Throughout the years, the department has had authority, which has been reduced to $25 million. And in the last few years, in 2019, they moved $5,481,000, and in FY 2020, they used $12,807,000, and in FY 21 it was $19,994,000. So coming right up on that $20 million amount that they had the authority to move. The reason I think it's appropriate to remove this language now, Madam Speaker, is because the department has now been divided. It is now into two departments, and they are starting. We could say that they're starting anew, and you may say, well, this might be the reason they need that authority. But in my opinion, this was meant to be a temporary solution to a very short-term problem, but has turned into a long-term fix that I believe that, again, we are the appropriators, Madam Speaker, and the department has been divided into two departments now, and they should be able to keep their budgeting as such. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. It's Representative Josephson.
Thank you. It may sound counterintuitive to our listening audience, if we have one. But I object to the amendment, and I stand with the administration. And I ask my colleagues to join me in standing with the administration. Here's why. The facts, as spoken by the minority leader, are accurate. It's true that this department, now two departments, has traditionally prior to about 7 years ago, didn't have this sort of flexibility. But the first thing is the subcommittee reduced for each new department the amount of flexibility from 20 million down to 10. So we've already sort of reined that in a bit. In my view, if there were ever a year to allow this transfer, it actually would be in the coming fiscal year, because the department is being divided, and there may be unanticipated effects on cost distribution among divisions that the department can solve with transfers instead of delaying service needy Alaskans will need until the legislature reconvenes in January. The Department of Health and the Department of Family and Community Services, here the Department of Health, are obligated to provide services to all seeking them. Both departments are unable to know from year to year which individual Alaskans will qualify for specific services or which programs might be needed more than any others. And may I give just 3 examples of the hazard in not giving this flexibility. The first is senior benefits. That's a standalone appropriation. If the fund is short and funds are due because of an increase in eligible applicants, the transfer language will help to ensure payments go out to seniors in a timely manner that benefits did not have to be curtailed. Second, juvenile justice. It may have a specific youth come into custody with serious medical issues that could cost tens of thousands of dollars and would not be covered by Medicaid due to being in state custody. This is impossible to predict, but in this circumstance, the state could cover that. OCS, in the past, needed federal authority to ensure foster care payments were able to be made or sent to foster families, et cetera. So I stand with the administration in providing this $10 million flexibility.
Thank you. Representative McCarty.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This definitely was discussed in the HES committee and actually was set aside for a time. The whole discussion was the bifurcation of the department and a strong emphasis of effective management. So before, there was a $20 million ability to move things around, but this was set aside to be discussed later on. At the end, it was put in there, but really, the emphasis was on effective management. I did not hear at all during that discussion there of them needing to move lots of money around in the past. What I did hear is the desire for effective control or management of the different divisions there. In this, there's no loss of funds that's being asked. It's just the ask for being able to move $10 million around as needed. What I'm concerned about is, as you're saying, doing this effective management by allowing for this is like a haphazard management protocol. And if there is need for money, as stated by the previous legislator, that they could be brought that up in supplemental, as we are expecting a lot of revenue coming in. But also is like for them to effectively see how this bifurcation is going to work out. So I don't see a need for this ability to just move $10 million around. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Zolkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While the previous speaker is correct that we did indeed set aside some considerations within the budget as it related to the bifurcation, the HES Budget Subcommittee did consider the budget in the two existing new departments created through the executive order. And while I do have my own opinions about the strategy and need for the executive order that has now become law as it relates to the creation of the Department of Health and the Department of Family and Community Services, I have to agree with my colleague from the UMed district that if there were any time for there to be existing flexibility in the budget, not creating access to new funds, but simply just the ability to be flexible and moving funding that is already appropriated by this legislature, this certainly would be the fiscal year, particularly as such an important and significant department worth billions in annual spending in Alaska is being separated into two departments. $10 million for the Department of Health seems to be a pretty conservative investment in making sure that the commissioner has what he needs to ensure success, so I oppose the amendment.
Thank you. Representative Kirka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the amendment. You know, on its surface, you talk about how big these departments are and how much flexibility they could really use to move back and forth, and it might sound like a good management policy. But as the sponsor of the amendment said, we are the appropriators, and sometimes I think that the legislative body could do a far better job at being tight and direct with the appropriations and explicit. To give an example, I think it was 2014 or maybe it was 2015, 2016, a previous governor went against the will of the legislature, went against the direct, explicit intent of the legislature and expanded Medicaid because there was money that he was able to pull from one place in the budget in the state that had been left over from something. And so I think we need tight controls. I think this amendment is good, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Representative Carpenter.
Speaker. So I see this as an issue of the legislature ceding its power to the executive branch, and it is only for one, now two departments. We have a process of appropriations and allocations for a reason, and we have basically a waiver of those reasons, if you will, a special circumstance or a special case for now two of our departments, but which was previously one. And the reasoning for that special dispensation was in the past, and it was supposed to be temporary, and many, many years now, the legislature has continued to allow that special dispensation to be able to move money around. And fundamentally, that is unfair for the rest of our departments, the rest of the budget process, for the rest of our managers to have to stay within our appropriation and allocation system of how we manage our money or how we appropriate our money, except for this one other department. It is incumbent upon us as good managers of money to be consistent across the board in our state government. What was supposed to be temporary needs to be eliminated now to return to a consistent way of managing our money. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Eastman.
Thank you. I count 11 different appropriations within this department, at least the ones that are obvious to me. Maybe there's others elsewhere in the bill. But I'm looking at appropriations such as the Community Initiative Matching Grants. It's an appropriation. Human Services Community Matching Grant. It's an appropriation. And we have written into our budget that money is supposed to stay within that appropriation, that we've created an appropriation. But effectively with this language, that appropriation is meaningless because you can take the amount that's currently budgeted for the Community Initiative Matching Grant Program, and with the flexibility of moving $10 million into or out of that, you can now expand that program between 11 and 12 times the amount that's been budgeted to it. And likewise, for some of these other appropriations, you can significantly exceed, many times over, the amount that have been budgeted for these items. What we have engendered, in effect, is the ability to enable and tolerate laziness on our part. No longer do we need to be careful making sure that the appropriation is exactly the right amount or close to it. We don't have to worry about that. We can push the buck to the department and let them deal with it, and that is not in keeping with responsible budgeting.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? In wrap-up, Representative Tilton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The speaker who had the HES budget said that you would have the potential of maybe funding senior benefit program, and I suppose that could be a potential, but I can tell you that from the transfers that have been made, that was never the case. Money was not transferred from senior benefits or into senior benefits. That has not been the case. It's a little difficult to speak to this because we now have two departments, and right now I am speaking to the Department of Family and Community Services, which contains Pioneer Homes, Children's Services, Juvenile Justice, and then the Department of Support Services. The greater proportion of money that was moved during the last years when there was larger amounts of money moved around within the department were moved into information technology. So those movements of the funds were not taking funds away or adding funds to a benefit program that somebody may need. So we are still providing all the benefits that are with the numbers of people who are applying for those benefits. Madam Speaker, I would just say that once again, we are the appropriators, and it for transparency's sake within the budget, and the fact that now this budget, this department has been broken into two departments, I would think that they would be able to have their budgeting on track. Again, I'll go back to this was meant to be a temporary measure that was only to make sure that we didn't overdraw our Medicaid budget. Now, throughout time, there's been language that has changed and yes, has been reduced, but and the language has said that the money can't come from the Medicaid budget, which is a good thing. We've tightened the language down. But, Madam Speaker, I would still contend that the language does not belong in the budget and that we are the appropriators and that we should not be giving this authority to any department. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall Amendment Number 39 to Committee Substitute for House Bill 281 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
17 yeas, 20 nays.
With 17 yeas and 20 nays, Amendment Number 39 has failed to pass the House. Representative Tilton.
I would move Amendment Number 40.
There's been an objection. Representative Tilton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is just, again, the second verse, same as the first. Because we've broken into two departments, this is now the Department of Health. And the Department of Health has the same authority given to it in our budget to move $10 million in between appropriation lines as the department sees fit. Under the Department of Health, we have behavioral health, healthcare services, public assistance, senior benefits, public health, and senior and disability services, Madam Speaker. And And I won't take up much more time because we've already had the discussion, but again, I would say that this is language that doesn't belong in the budget, that we are the appropriators, and we should expect transparency from ourselves, from the department, and with that, I would ask for a yes vote.
Is there further discussion? Representative Hannon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question for the maker, because I followed along with the discussion, but this amendment says it's on page 13, which would make it the amendment to the Department of Health and Family Service, and Amendment 39 would have been to the Department of Health. And I want to make sure that the record is accurate in reflecting that.
Is there further discussion? In wrap-up, Representative Tilton.
Thank you, and thank you to the representative who's sitting behind me. My amendments got lost in the shuffle, and so I figured that they were in chronological order, and apparently where they were not, but I think everybody gets the gist of what I am asking for. The one concern that a lot of people have stated is that a lot of individuals are concerned about the behavioral health budget and money coming out of that behavioral health budget, and that is not something that we have put any sideboards on. So I would just ask you to consider that when you're thinking about how you're going to vote on this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question? Question is, shall amendment number 40 pass the House? Members may proceed to vote. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
17 yeas, 20 nays.
With 17 yeas and 20 nays, amendment number 40 has not passed the House. Madam Clerk, please read the next item on today's calendar. Brief it is.
Could somebody please explain to me why all of a sudden we're going to what is next on the calendar? Big question mark. Does that mean that this budget is over with, that they don't get a final chance to stand up and speak their feelings on what's going on with the current budget that they have passed? That's what I'm getting the impression of. Really, really shocking that they're already moving on. I mean, the only thing they got left is the mental health budget, but they're not done with this one.
Please come back to order. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move and ask unanimous consent that the committee substitute for House Bill 281, Finance, as amended, be considered engrossed, advance to third reading, and placed on final passage.
There's been an objection. This bill will be held till the next day's calendar. Madam Clerk, please read the next item on today's calendar.
Committee substitute for House Bill 282, Finance, Appropriations Mental Health Budget is in second reading.
Madam Clerk, are there any amendments?
Amendment number 1 by Representatives Laban and Thompson, beginning page 8, following line 25.
Representative Laban.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move and ask unanimous consent to withdraw amendment number 1.
Hearing no objection, amendment number 1 has been withdrawn. Brief it is. Oh, do I? Yeah.
So as fast as they get going is as fast as they shut it back down again. So they have moved on to House Bill 282, which is the mental health budget. They have tabled the final vote for HB 281 until tomorrow.
Thank you, Representative Laban. Mr. Majority Leader.
Speaker.
Brief it
I
easy.
would-
Another brief at ease while they're trying to get their act together. So far, they have gotten rid of 2 of the bills, and again, as fast as they gavel in, they gavel back out. They just cannot make up their minds down there what they're going to do. They knew full well that HB 282 was going to be discussed next. The vote was supposed to have happened, from my understanding, tonight on HB 281 and HB 282. And now they're postponing the final vote for tomorrow. As I stressed in what I had typed up on the top of my post here for this video, I really do hope that they don't get the 3/4 vote needed for the CBR and the sweep.
Will the House please come back to order? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move and ask unanimous consent that the committee substitute for House Bill 252 Finance be considered engrossed, advanced to 3rd reading, and placed on final passage.
There's been an objection. This bill will be held till the next day's calendar. Madam Clerk, please read the next item on today's calendar.
There are citations on today's calendar.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move and ask unanimous consent that the House approve the citations on today's calendar.
Hearing no objection, the citations on today's calendars have been approved. Is there any unfinished business? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have no excused absences to move at this time.
Are there any committee announcements? Representative Clayman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tomorrow, the House Judiciary Committee will be hearing from Dr. Ingrid Johnson, a professor at University of Alaska Anchorage, reporting on the 2020 Alaska Victimization Survey. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Are there any other committee announcements? Representative Christ-Tompkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. State Affairs, which is scheduled for this Saturday, will meet at the call of the chair rather than the 10 a.m. noticed meeting.
Thank you. Representative Fields.
Labor and Commerce tomorrow is canceled.
Are there any other committee announcements? Seeing none, are there any other announcements? Representative Tuck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tomorrow at 5:30 in the Davis Committee Room, there will be a celebration and portrait.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get out of what they had going on there, where they are done for the day. They have tabled both HB 281 and HB 282 for final votes for tomorrow, and that is where they're leaving it at. So it was just another dog and pony show on their part. They made a big grandstanding. We are going to finish all of this today, and it's going to be done, and no longer have to worry about it. And so now they're bringing it back again tomorrow. Well, there went my first free day this week, not to have to worry about being here to make sure things are up and running. But maybe that's not a bad thing, because tomorrow I'm actually working in the shop all day. It's my first day without a job outside of it, so I don't have to worry about just packing up and heading on out. The budget didn't change at all. They tried to rescind the vote for amendment number 75, which was for the governor, and it was almost a unanimous vote not to go and rescind that vote and re-vote on it again, which is really sad to know that it passed 20-17, and it was right along a legal binding caucus line. So how many of those legislators out there have sold their voices and their votes for their constituents? Now is a good time. You can see it in the vote. It is posted on our page. So go there, take a look, and you can see how much they just told the governor he has to pull out of his own personal back pocket $400,000 to cover that lawsuit, which is absolutely atrocious and outrageous. And they weaponized the judicial system. They have weaponized the legislative branch to punish anyone that does not match or meet the agenda that they have in play, which is very obvious. I mean, recall Dunleavy was formed before the governor even had a chance to put out his first budget, and they were already attacking him, saying that you can't do this, you can't do that, and then the lawsuit got placed up against him, so on and so forth. Well, the lawsuit that he lost was an at-will employee that got fired, and what precedence does it set to that any future governor that fires an at-will employee? What's to stop the left from getting outraged and once again going to and bring another lawsuit against them? Or when the governor loses a lawsuit, they just they force the governor to pay for that lawsuit. So if you don't follow our agenda that we have for you, we're going to punish you one way or another. And we're going to make sure it's painful. I mean, imagine you yourself, an individual that's watching this right now, was told that in your employment, working for your boss, doing a job that you are paid to do, and you think you are covered by your boss. Let's say you're a bus driver and you get into an accident. And now they come back and say, oh, this accident is all your fault, even though it was their tire on the vehicle that had blown out when it hit a pothole and it snapped the axle and slid you into the rear end of another vehicle and a whole bunch of people got hurt. They'd come back and they say, that's your fault that axle, that tire popped, not us. It was all your fault. And you're going to have to now pay for all the casualties in that accident that just happened. That is no different than what they have just done to Governor Dunleavy today. They threw him under the bus. The only good bill that did pass out of the last 3 days was, in my opinion, was the one for abortions. And they removed all funding for abortions once again, and so that the state doesn't pay for it. Our tax dollars are not being used to pay for it. Doesn't mean Medicaid doesn't get paid by the federal government, and that doesn't mean that people that are on Medicaid that are receiving state money for that Medicaid program that they're using can't go and get an abortion. It just means that they can't go directly and say to the state is going to pay for this abortion and not instead of Medicaid, because we have provided funding for that. But we've all seen how well that's worked out in the courts the last few years. It'll get rejected. We'll spend millions, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, fighting and litigating the case once again, just to have it shot back down. They really do need to pass the bill that they have in Texas right now, the heartbeat bill, to where any average citizen, you or me, could sue the abortion clinic if they were to perform an abortion on somebody after a certain point and bring a civil lawsuit against them. And that I believe would be the right step to go. But I know the will of the legislators down there in Juneau, there's no will to do anything that is what in the best interest of Alaskans. That was very evident by all the amendments that they tabled, and Representative Kevin McCabe and Carpenter were some of the main instigators of most of those amendments being tabled. Some of the amendments that were going to be discussed was talking about critical race theory in our schools and banning anything that has to do with critical race theory within our school system. And it specifically targeted critical race theory thinking. Something that we've seen being passed all over the nation here lately. I think there's 23 states now that have bills passed against critical race theory being taught in their schools, and it's growing every day. I could be wrong. It could be lower down to around 17, but I believe the last number was 23, or at least 23 have lawsuits going through right now to get that out, and bills moving through their legislators to get that out of the school systems. It became very evident that it's going on. We have it, see it directly in our school systems here in Alaska. Go to the North Star School District's borough's website. school district board's website, and you can see they have right up on the top, equity and diversity is their motto. Anchorage has the same thing. They passed it last year. Equity and diversity is their motto. And when they tried to introduce language into the equity diversity that made a promise that they would not teach any CRT or at least even put the words critical race theory into the actual equity and diversity bill that they were policies that they were passing in the school district, they refused to do it. That should tell you everything you need to know, that if they're refusing to put even the words into the language of the bill, something that they claim they're not doing, it should send up every red flag in the book telling you that is what they're doing. But again, we've got a $7 billion budget here that is going to be voted on tomorrow morning, and that's going to pass that $7 billion budget. There's no hands down about that. If the House minority Republicans had any brains in their head, I'm not holding my breath on that anymore. Not after all of the amendments that they tabled, like the one that would have addressed CRT in school. They just put them down to where they would never even be heard to get along. The excuse was so that they could be out of there within 90 days. There is absolutely no reason why we should be worrying about being out within 90 days. Not when they have all that infrastructure money that still has to be allocated and spent. The entire budget's going to be around $13.5 billion. That's just a small fraction of the $29 billion that has entered the state in the past year between coronavirus infrastructure money and direct payouts to like the Alaska Native tribes here that got $1.7 billion handed directly to them, or the school districts like Anchorage that has a $500 million given to them through the coronavirus. Not to mention what they're also getting through the infrastructure package directly to them that they have years to spend. But they're broke, so they need a $57 million budget increase bonus this year. Every single government department they have put in a bonus for them to receive this year from the budget. So they're going to get an extra check on top of their regular checks just for doing their jobs. And these are the exact same people that have not missed a single day of work during the entire pandemic. They have not missed a single paycheck while you, me, were locked in our homes, had to close our businesses down, weren't allowed to go nowhere, shamed and shunned if you are caught not wearing a mask, so on and so forth. All of us who suffered the most, lost our businesses, still haven't recovered from it. And now with the hyperinflation going through the roof, 7% average increase last year, then that doesn't include fuel oil and gas and everything else that was hitting 50% to almost 100% more for what you were paying the year before. I mean, fill up my fuel tank last year for my fuel oil, it cost me only about $2.30 a gallon. That same fuel is now costing me $4 a gallon. Now, I'm almost double what I paid last year for the fuel oil that I need to be able to keep my house warm. I'm not going to be able to do it this year, and the token little pittance of our permanent fund dividend that they want to give us of $1,200 is not going to even pay to fill even that. That's going to be half of the fuel that I got the year before. That's reality. And this energy rebate that they're talking about, that, oh, here, this stimulus that we're going to give you on top of that, and they're calling that, no, that's not a permanent fund dividend. But guess where that money's coming from? The ERA account. They're pulling it from the dividend. So obviously it must be a dividend, but they don't want to call it that, because if they do call it that, then that means they're giving us $2,500 and not $1,200 for a PFD. But they don't. They're trying to confuse the matter. But that stimulus did pass through, and at least through this portion of the process. And tomorrow, when they do the final vote, I'm sure it's going to pass through again with the majority of the body there for everything that is going to be said, because it's just going to be an up or down vote now for the entire budget that they've been debating for the last 3 days. The never-ending cycle that just never seems to stop. Every version of a full statutory PFD that you could think of, from pulling from the ERA even to breaking the law and using the tax money from the general funds to pay for the PFD, was all shot down. They would not follow the law, even though after paying for the entire proposed governor's budget of $4.8 billion, they had an additional $3.5 billion sitting there above and beyond what the actual budget proposed for this year was supposed to be. Now, that does not include the POMV draw, and the average, from what I've been told, for the draw this year is supposed to be around $4.1 billion. So you add on the $7 billion and another $4 billion on top of that, you look at their $7 billion budget that they currently have going on right now, and that's above and beyond the current budget of $2.2 billion. Then you add in the early funding for K through 12 that jacked another $1.2 billion into the budget, and all these extras that they are giving out there to pay for the oil tax credits are more important than paying back a permanent fund dividend, but they're not important enough to pay off, even though they are the ones that are generating the tax revenue that is coming back in through the door into the pipeline that is funding our government. So that just shows you the irony behind the thought and the mentality of the folks down there in Juneau. You can build trails, ice roads, they call them trails, for the between native villages, but you can't build an ice road to the Willow Project to be able to get supplies there to get the oil pumping, because the trails are not covered under environmental the protections, and they don't have to go through the rigorous rigmarole of making sure that environmental impact studies and all that other stuff is done each and every year that they're building these roads to make sure that they're safe and not destroying our environment. But if you want to go extract oil and you want to build almost pretty much the exact same type of road, God forbid, you can't do that. We're going to shut you down. You just shake your head. I mean, this is the lunacy that is going on down there in Juneau just really, really, really makes you wonder, do these people even have a brain in their head? Where did they get an education from? I mean, I would think that they're part of the new math generation, the ones that get participation trophies for just attempting to try to figure out what 1 + 1 is. It's 4, right? I mean, congratulations, here's your trophy for the wrong answer. That's kind of way we're teaching our children now. We've gotten away from the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, science. Where's STEM? STEM should be a #1 factor here in Alaska, especially since we're on the leading edge of, as they quote, climate change. You would think we would want to have some competent scientists out there that have gone through the STEM program and excel at what they're supposed to do. But if you go to the public school system and you have any brain in your head, you're constantly and consistently held back with the rest of the class, because you're not allowed to move at your own pace. If you are a quick learner, you're stifled, you're slowed down. You're not able to continue on, because the way the school structure and the brick and mortars is you've got to work at the pace of the slowest person there. And with the new equity and diversity program they have, equity means for them, we're not going to take these champion people over here that are doing and excelling and, hey, maybe be living at the poverty level, and we'll give them a little bit of extra income in some ways so that we can get them into higher performing levels of the classes that matches the education of the student that needs it. Instead, we're going to take that student and we're going to shove them way down here to match these students way down over here that are not doing very well. And we're going to take that person that excels and we're going to make sure that there's an equity in their outcomes. So they're no longer have that person way up here getting a good education because they've got brains in their heads and they're being rewarded for those brains. No, they're being held down here because they want an equal outcome for everybody. And that's how you create a society that is very compliant, that does what you tell them to do, because there's no thought or process to want to move and get better. I saw it with my own child. I mean, I entered her into a school, Burchell, out here in the valley for high school when she was in the 9th grade. And then because she was a good graded student, I let her interview all the different schools out there and high schools. And we live in a busing system to where you could go to many different schools, and there are buses that take you to what they call the home school, and then one bus that takes you to the alternative school. So I took advantage of it all these years. I mean, I've been utilizing it through her entire K through 12th grade years. She hasn't gone to a school district that's in my area, not once. Reason being is we've got some of the worst schools in the school district out here in the Big Lake area. I mean, Big Lake Elementary and Houston Elementary are not the best schools, or middle school and high school are not the best schools in the school district, at least out here in the valley. So my kid has always gone to a different school. Well, when she entered into Burchell, she really liked the idea of having all of her school books and everything else and all of her homework on tablets. And her first year being there, they had a really good principal that was there, and that principal would allow you to work at your own pace. So if you're really fast at what you did, you could excel straight through all of the class projects and everything else that is on the tablet for that particular course that you were learning. And if you were able to get it done in record time, and the rest of the class, you'd find yourself with all this time to do absolutely nothing. You could go and do murals on the wall, painting and stuff like that, because all your schoolwork was done for the year. My kid's first year in school, she spent the last 2.5 months in Burchell painting murals on the wall because she was done with her entire school year. Then the year of the pandemic, it started. My kid started going to school, new principal. This principal wouldn't let you work ahead anymore, so she would finish her projects or whatever she had to do for that particular course and was not allowed to keep going. She had to stop and wait for the rest of the class to catch up. And excuse me. And then while the rest of the class was catching up, once they finally did caught up, then the principal would allow the class to release the next project, or the teacher would release the next project for them all to get started on. And if you're fast at what you did and you're very good at what you do and you're getting straight A's at everything you're doing anyways and excel through it, you once again found yourself twiddling your thumbs waiting on the school to get back into progress. Second half of the school year, pandemic hits. Amazingly enough, after the end of the pandemic, and they finally let everybody go back to school again, but it was all out of class learning, remote learning at that point, and they opened up the school courses to her. Well, she was already very familiar with remote style learning because they were already using tablets in school. She had been doing this for almost 2 solid years at this point. So all of her lessons were online, all the schoolwork is online, and they zoomed in once a day with their teachers because they had to. But as soon as they had released the schoolwork for the rest of the school year from the time they had been missing out to the end of the school year, and there was no more roadblocks to how fast she could work, within almost a week and a half of the rest of the school year was completed and she was done and didn't have no more schoolwork while everybody else was going to school, while a record number of students were finding themselves having to go to summer school. Next year came around, 11th grade, and that's when she said, can I just get into a homeschool program? She once again went around, interviewed all the different homeschools here in Alaska, and found the 2 best, brought them to me, argued her case why she liked one over another, and then because she is such a good kid and such a bright student, I allowed her to pick the school she wanted to go to. And lo and behold, within less than 2 months after the school year had started, she had graduated from the 12th grade because she was no longer being held back from how fast she was able to work and get through the work that they had for the high school level. Amazing. I just shake my head. I could keep going on for days and days and days describing the hypocrisy of what is going on out there. I mean, $57 million bonus for a school system that costs around $20,000 to $22,000 per student. Once you get adding in the federal contribution that goes on top of the state contribution, and then you add on the local contribution that your property taxes are paying for, that get added into that budget. So when they tell you, oh man, they're only getting $12,000 per student, well, that may be only at the state level. You're not adding in the federal money. You're not adding in the local money that gets distributed on top of that. And it's not evenly distributed when it comes to that $12,000. You got barrel places like Yugotovic there that literally has almost $22,000 budgeted per student, and you've got other places that are, I mean, they got one place that's almost $44,000 per student, and they've got 12 students going to that school. What they are making per year per student is enough to send them each of one of those kids to Harvard for a 4-year degree. I mean, that just then that's just to go to high school there. And I mean, not even go through high school. That's just going through your K through sixth grade levels. They've spent enough to cover the education of their K through 6 and send them to Harvard for an education when they're all through. That's how much money it's costing to educate them in that place. Shakes your head the waste of money that's going on. Same thing with our health department. I mean, $3.6 billion the last past year. They don't even want to tell you what they spent this year or this last past year for the actual budget. 3.6 was the pandemic year, the very first year. And then they never wanted to disclose what actually got spent last year. They didn't want you to know how much of that coronavirus money went flooding into the medical department, the hundreds of millions and billions that they raked in, if you combine them all, that just flooded into our state. Those people are rich, and they charge 3 times the going rate for a normal medical visit. I know this for a fact. For a visit just for a normal checkup cost me $300, and it was another $100 on top of that for the blood tests they had to do to make sure that the medications I was taking was still working after almost 15 years of taking them. It's ridiculous to have to spend $400 for a 20-minute checkout for them to draw blood to be able to come back and say, oh, yeah, you're good. We're resubscribing your prescriptions for another year. See you a year from now so we can prick you again and charge you another $400 for your visit. So between those two, those are the biggest budget items that we have in the state. And then you add the university kind of comes in line with that after that. With the on top of that, the transportation, the marine highway is one of the biggest chunks that costs us the most money there, and they can eliminate a lot of that cost for the marine highway just by charging more, putting it more in line for what it actually costs to run that ferry system. You don't see the private sector paying for a person's ticket to ride that ferry or paying for that person's vehicle to be on their cargo ships. They don't give those kind of monetary breaks. I mean, you can... It's just the people that are flying their stuff into the other villages because they don't have a ferry system being subsidized by the state. That's when people get mad at me when I call our ferry systems here a welfare program. Well, what else is it? The state's paying for it. It's not the citizens that are using it that are paying for it. And we're subsidizing it to the hilt using taxpayers' money. What's a better description of a welfare program than that? There isn't. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox. I think I've kind of rambled on for a little while here. Thank you all for being here today. Do not forget to like and share this video. Go to my website, politidic.com, and click that support button. All proceeds go right back into expanding what we've been doing here. As you can see behind me, I've got the studio is rapidly heading towards completion. I was able to get the window blacked out from yesterday so that you can actually see me on the screen now instead of being this black and shadowed figure that looks like I'm giving one of those, I can't tell you who I am, but we're going to talk about the deep state today. So today you can actually see me in the picture, and but we'll be back again tomorrow morning when they open back up. But go up to my website, politidic.com, click that support button. It's paying for the restream services that we're utilizing right now to stream this onto Politidic, onto YouTube, onto Twitter, and onto Politidic Unfiltered, also on Facebook. So you can find us at Politidic everywhere, and Politidic Unfiltered was put onto Facebook to do nothing but streaming live videos. That way, if they censor Politidic, I will still be able to get the message out there on Unfiltered, and you guys can be able to at least see the videos that I am streaming. They don't ban that page because I don't post anything that they would consider controversy or misinformation or anything else along those lines. It's straightforward videos just like this, so you'll guaranteed get a notification from that page. If you go and like Politidic Unfiltered on Facebook, you'll always get a notification when we go live. Unlike Politidic, which they've been shadow banning, less than 10% of you will ever see this video. It's very obvious by the number of viewers that I have watching and how many they show have seen the videos after they have done. The last few days have been atrocious. I compare my numbers to 2 years ago, and it just makes me shake my head knowing how bad our tech out there, big tech, is censoring people's voices. They have shut mine down. They've shut down just about every conservative that is out there. But if I was on the Democrats page, or I was a Democrat and I was following their agenda, I guarantee you I've already received 40 notices that I've posted something on their page, or my page if I was a Democrat, and you would have got 40 notices. And every time I did anything, even wrote the word "ha ha" and posted it, you guys would have got, all 4,600 of you would have got a notification of it. But since I'm on the wrong side of fence, I'm lucky if 100 of you see that same "ha ha" that was posted. Ha ha, big joke on all of us. Again, thank you all for being here today. You guys have been awesome. Like, share this video. Alaskans need to learn the truth of what's going on down there in Juneau, and this one's a good one to be sharing out. It's nice and short on their end, and I think gave a pretty good commentary here at the end today. You guys all have yourself a great evening, and I will see you in the morning.